I'm Trinidadi, and let's queer up the USA view. The Trump administration proposes a rollback of LGBTQ plus housing protections. A new rule from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development would eliminate protections based on gender identity and sexual orientation, introduced under Barack Obama. It would instead require federally funded shelters to house people according to what it defines as their biological sex, even in states where local laws prohibit this. The proposal also removes a 2016 safeguard banning shelters from asking invasive questions or requiring proof related to a person's body or medical history. Under the new rule, grant recipients, subrecipients, owners, operators, managers, and providers under HUD programs can request, quote, the ability to require reasonable assurances and evidence to confirm the sex of an individual, end quote, though it does not clarify what that means. Critics warn the changes could enable harmful practices and increase risks for trans people who already face higher rates of homelessness. The policy relies on Executive Order 14168 and frames the changes as measures to protect women and religious freedom. The proposal will now enter a public comment phase. Well, I don't know how much religious freedom is entering the chat when we're talking about homeless people trying to get into a shelter. I'm always a little bit torn on this, and because I don't know the details of every shelter. I do think that maybe in some communal shelters where they have a lot of people sharing a space where they're changing together, I think maybe that could cause some distress among, let's just say, cisgendered females who are maybe a little uncomfortable with some other people that are in that space, and vice versa. And I think it just is a case-by-case basis. I think every shelter should have a person who makes the call on what makes other people feel comfortable in that situation. I do think that it does disproportionately affect trans people
and black and brown people.
Yeah, and I think that in those spaces, most people probably don't care if they're homeless and they're just trying to stay alive. They're trying to get food, their basic necessities. I can't imagine that they care as much as these lawmakers are trying to make it out that they care. It's more of a discriminatory thing. But I do think there are probably some cases where it might make a difference depending on what the space looks like. So I think there should be somebody at every shelter that makes that decision, and it shouldn't be a blanket law on every shelter receiving funding.
I think every shelter works differently, just depending on where their guidelines, right? So, like for Miami, they don't have a space separate for women and children. Everybody's just together. You know what I mean? So, if that's your last line, if you're going to a shelter, you at least deserve some dignity, right? And I don't think that you should be going through the door and it's like, drop your pants. I mean, it just seems like you're taking away the humanity when someone's asking for some help.
Exactly. No one going to a shelter is having their best day.
Yes.
Nobody going to a shelter nobody going to a shelter is pretending to be trans so they can get a quick look or cop a feel or assault someone. No athlete is trying to pretend to be trans so that they can get a medal and show that off for the rest of their life, even if they do very likely peak in high school. The fact is, this is just another blatant, transparent bit of queer baiting, of fag bashing coming out of this Trump administration. There are few dots and they're incredibly easy to connect. Now you don't feel safe going to a shelter. So what do? You stay out on the streets. What happens on the streets? Assaults, sexual assaults, and death. And suicide. This is just removing another layer of protection that's going to lead to more blood on our sidewalks, more victims every single day, and more names to be read at Trans Day of Remembrance every other year. This is vile.
The way that I'm looking at this from a public policy perspective, this is obviously going to end up in the courts. I think that we're going to end up in a situation where, quite frankly, we're going to go back to relitigating potentially, if we're continuing to go down this road. I want you to really think about the fact that we're going to be relitigating the CRA of 1965. I want you to really think about the fact that that's the road we're going down here, because we're already talking about discrimination in public accommodations. You're already going down the road of challenging the Civil Rights Act. This is going to get very scary very fast for people, and we quite frankly have to gear up, because this is going to get a whole lot bigger than just LGBTQ housing and public accommodations, I do think that there could be a potential case to be looked at when it comes down to the Civil Rights Act, and I think we need to, quite frankly, I'm not somebody who curses on the air, but that's the type of stuff that scares me shitless.
I think it scares many people. I mean, the whites only signs could not only be in our past, but could be in our freaking future. And that is some scary shit. There, I said it for you. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by sharing them and subscribing to Queer News Tonight.